thought about what beauty is? Beauty is biology, and the human desire for beauty is genetically programmed. Beauty is a social currency that rewards the lucky beholder. Beauty is not one size fits all. Hi, I'm Dr. Monica Bonakdar. I'm an aesthetic medicine specialist practicing in Newport Beach, California. I'm the creator of Monbon Clinical Skincare and Amplify Filler Technique. You are listening to Beauty Heroes Podcast, where I chat candidly with trailblazing beauty leaders, examining, questioning, and challenging everything you thought you knew about beauty and the current beauty standards. My goal is to make beauty more inclusive and accessible to all aesthetically oriented men and women. All right, let's do this. Hello, everyone. We're here today with Sachin Shridharani, and he is a plastic surgeon and founder of Lux Surgery Clinic in New York City. He's going to talk to us about Kybella, which is the only FDA-approved injectable that destroys fat permanently. Sachin, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me, Monica. It's great to be here.
So you're a plastic surgeon, but you're known as the king of this non-invasive procedure. Tell me about your background.
Sure. Well, I am a plastic surgeon. I did train in the classic training of surgery and absolutely love to spend my days in the operating room. And the importance and the value of also non-surgical treatment. So my background was that after high school, I got into a 6-year bachelor MD combined honors program at the University of Missouri. So I did my bachelor's and MD in a combined program. Yep. And then after that, I finished med school, just turned 24 and got accepted into the Johns Hopkins plastic surgery training program, which basically was also kind of an honors accelerated program. So I was able to shave off a few years there as well.
Were you the youngest in the group?
I was the youngest in the group. And actually, it was funny because when I was at my chief resident graduation ceremony and gave my speech, my chairman had commented on me being young, and the next youngest resident in the program was actually just 1 month younger than me, but was just starting his 7 years of training.
Wow.
So it was kind of a nice thing that I was able to kind of get through and be done with my plastic surgery training, had just turned 30. And then I moved to New York to basically pursue my fellowship at Manhattan Eye, Ear, Throat Hospital, which is kind of a really great hospital focusing nothing on anything other than basically the discipline of cosmetic plastic surgery. So I did a 1-year fellowship and then decided to stay in New York and start my own practice. And here we are now with having founded Lux Surgery. And we have our home on Fifth Avenue right across from Central Park. I look forward to hosting you some point soon, anytime you're in the city.
Well, thank you.
So yeah, that's us.
Well, congratulations. And tell me about your practice, surgical and non-surgical. What percentages?
So it's such a seasonal thing across the country and here in New York, but definitely I would say that our practice favors, from the amount of time per week committed to, it's probably pretty close to 60-40 non-surgical to surgical. It's pretty impressive with how many people are opting for non-surgical treatments, but want the expertise of a plastic surgeon or a dermatologist in your situation to help them, because there are a lot of people doing some of these treatments that may not necessarily have our backgrounds or our extensive training.
Sure.
And so we're really fortunate in that way. But yeah, I spend at least 2, sometimes 3 days a week in the operating room. And then we see patients on Saturday as well. So another 3 to 3.5 days a week doing non-invasive treatments.
A crusader, Sachin. Those are a lot of hours. And so how did you become the spokesperson for Kybella?
It was one of these things that just became highly fortuitous. I was fortunate to be given a unique opportunity to get my hands on it early. So whenever they were deciding on trainers and people to lecture and train and teach on how to use this treatment, I was approached and saying, well, we'd like to have one more plastic surgeon in New York. And I was doing some creative things in media at the time, and I'd recently just done a segment on Meredith Vieira on NBC and was asked to basically talk about the future of fat. And I mentioned the product. I got to the attention of the founder, CEO of the company that was developing the product. And they said, we really appreciate, what you said about the future of fat and us being part of it. We'd love to get you involved. So I said, sure, that sounds great. But basically, I went out to California, learned how to use it, and was the first plastic surgeon in New York to get his hands on the product. And that gave us a unique opportunity to run with the treatment, start treating a lot of patients, and get a lot of media attention. Because again, when you have the world's first FDA-approved permanent fat-dissolving injection, and you've got it on your shelf and you're the first one and you understand things about it, it creates a lot of attention. And one thing led to another, and we started treating hundreds and hundreds of patients. Hundreds became thousands, led to a lot of research. And next thing you know, we treated 3,000 patients and people took notice. So.
Wow, congratulations. That's wonderful. Double chin, what causes it?
So the double chin is the bane of so many people's existences, unfortunately. And really, there's a few different components that factor into a double chin. First and foremost, we want to make sure that it's fat, right? We want to make sure, I always say that there's the F word you're not supposed to say when you're a kid. It gets you in trouble. And there's the F word that you're not allowed to say when you're a grown-up that gets you into trouble, and they change. And when you're a grown-up,
so true.
Fat, right? So
yes.
Unfortunately, one of the key components of having a double chin is increased subcutaneous or fat that's just deep to the skin. One can have a genetic component to it. It can be a weight gain issue. It could be an age where we tend to just hold on to some additional fat in that lower portion of the face, whether you're a man or a woman, you're old or young. If you're thin, you've got patients who are thin that can also have a component of it. You've got patients who are heavier that don't have fullness in their face, but wear it in other parts of their body. So really the main component is fat, and it really spares no sex, no age, no gender, no race, anything across the board.
According to Allergan, 2 out of 3 aesthetically oriented adults is bothered by their double chin or submental fat. Do you find those statistics to be true in your practice population in New York, or are they less critical or more hypercritical of themselves?
We're biased towards more hypercritical. I think because the word is out there that we do this treatment, we have so many patients. So this last week alone, going into the weekend, which is a popular time for Kybella treatments, we treated 6 patients Friday alone for Kybella to the double chin, and probably 4 or 5 more on Saturday. So you're talking about 10 patients who got treated alone. That's a lot of patients to come in who are concerned about this, but they know that we're here and understand how to treat that area and get a good outcome. I would say anecdotally, a fun thing that I realized in my practice about people being bothered by this is, if I looked at today alone in the office, I had a mother and daughter come in because the daughter is interested in rhinoplasty, and she's like 17 years old. And she said, I'm here, mom got her nose done when she was around 18, I've got mom's nose, and I'd like to get it fixed. And so they're like, okay, they're having a conversation. I'm like, what are you looking for? And she pointed at mom and she goes, I don't want it to look like that. I was like, oh no.
Oh my.
You gotta be nicer to your mom. She's paying for this procedure. And they kind of like laughed, but kind of were like, what's wrong with my nose? And she's like, well, it's like this. I said, okay, I'm going to leave the room, let you guys sort this out, and I'll come back when you're ready to talk to me. And they were like, oh my God, like this is so funny, like mothers and their daughters like talking about this nose. I had a husband, I had a boyfriend and girlfriend come in. She's interested in having a breast augmentation. And he immediately was like, oh, why don't you go bigger? And she's like, oh my God, like, I can't believe you want to go bigger. You like my girlfriend. She has bigger boobs than me. I knew it.
Oh,
like,
no.
That whole conversation played out. We have patients that would complain about Botox. Like, I don't look angry. Why does everybody need me to do this? I'm like, you look angry. You need to relax those lines and creases. There's never been a situation where someone's come in concerned about their double chin and their partner's like, oh, honey, why don't you keep that double chin? It's such a great look for you. Every winter, when you wear that turtleneck, I love how it scrunches that face up and has all that fat and skin there. So if someone's bothered by this, like, they are really bothered. And it does not surprise me that 2 out of 3 aesthetically oriented adults are bothered by it. I feel like it's probably a lot higher than that number.
So from what you're saying, at least people in New York City are not emotionally attached to their double chin look.
Correct. They are emotionally attached to getting rid of that look.
And so what have the results been? Are people happy?
We seem to have a really high patient satisfaction rate when it comes to treating patients with Kybella. I think it's predicated on a few things, but probably the most important is that we're therapeutic with the way that we treat. All too often when I hear about some of the less than thrilled outcomes, if you really sort of go behind the curtain, you'll often find that patients did not have enough drug or enough number of treatment cycles to get the outcome that they needed or that they wanted. And it's sort of like not doing enough reps and expecting you to have the muscle tone you want. It doesn't work that way. You've got to be able to treat efficiently, treat appropriately, and treat therapeutically. But when that's done, our patient satisfaction rate is very high. So much so that when we've looked internally at our patients, when we've looked at people who've never had any type of aesthetic treatment and they started with Kybella, we have an over 80% retention within the first 6 months for something other than Kybella. And as you know, in your busy practice in California, people don't come back to the office for something else if they're not happy with the first treatment. The fact that 8 out of 10 people in 6 months come back was really telling to me that these are happy patients.
Yeah, actually, I should say that the realself.com worth it percentage for Kybella is 77%. So in your practice, 80% of your Kybella users doing another treatment within the first 6 months. Sounds like your worth it numbers are definitely higher. So you like the results. Talk to me about how Kybella works.
Sure, absolutely. Well, and also to comment on the Real Self worth it rating, there's a lot of factors, I think, as you know, that go into some of these treatments not having necessarily the worth it rating. And again, the most common thing I think is that patients are afraid of either the swelling or they've been treated subtherapeutically. And I'm sure we'll get to that in a little bit. But our practice, I'd say the satisfaction is well into the high 90s, which is what I want and what I expect if I'm going to do an elective cosmetic procedure. I find anything less than near 100% satisfaction is basically unacceptable because we're doing elective cosmetic treatments and we need to make sure that we have a very high satisfaction rate for something that someone doesn't have to have, but rather wants. And I think that's important. But
so how does Kybella work?
Yeah, so Kybella works basically, it's deoxycholic acid, which sounds scary, but it's not. If we were to have a slice of New York's finest cheese pizza, or for you in Southern California, some maybe, mahi-mahi fish tacos that were maybe fried instead of old ones, let's say a little fat in the diet. So anything with a little fatty content in the diet basically is going to trigger your body to produce its own natural Kybella or deoxycholic acid in the gallbladder, and it's a bile salt. So basically what Kythera, which was the company that created Kybella and then was acquired by Allergan, was able to do was extract this acid out of a plant. So of all things, it was a non-animal, non-human derived version of this acid found in our bodies that when it hits the fat cells, it destroys them. It doesn't just make them smaller. It'll hit the fat cell, rupture the cell membrane, and kill it, and allow now for the healing cascade to occur and for cells to come in and get rid of all the dead fat that's resulted there.
So it's kind of like Krypton for fat cells.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Is it safe?
It is very safe. Again, we have to remember that this is already a naturally found substance and compound inside of our bodies. So to have a synthetic version that is non-animal and non-human derived really puts us at the forefront of innovation and technology with being able to use something that's in our bodies without causing an allergic reaction, and we're able to destroy fat cells permanently. So it is very safe when it's used correctly.
So let's talk about that. You mentioned when used correctly and therapeutically. How many treatments and how far apart before you see results?
So I tell patients that they need to do at least 2 treatments at the bare minimum. before they should expect to see any type of change. And I think that sets the expectations straight, because if patients only do one treatment and they don't react as quickly or as much as they would have wanted, they get discouraged. And we know that I tell them to think about the fat like layers of an onion, and we are peeling back a layer every time we do the treatment. So in an area that has a thicker fat pad, there's more layers of an onion, we have to use more treatment cycles. In an area that's thinner, then they don't have to do as many treatments. So typically we tell patients to expect to do at least 2 treatments, but as many as need be to get to their outcome. I find that on average, people do about 2 to 3 treatments, and we space them about 6 to 8 weeks apart, because patients start to see an outcome by the time they hit 5, 6, 7 weeks. So now they're encouraged, they're seeing a nice change. They're like, okay, we're on the right track. If you ask them to come in too soon and say, hey, let's do this again, they may not see any change. Then they're getting discouraged. And if you wait too long, then there's poor retention, because if you need to get 3 treatments in and you make someone wait 3 or 4 months in between them, it's going to take you 9 months to a year to get them treated. And that's not going to be an effective use of their time or resources either. So I find 6 to 8 weeks to be the sweet spot.
The reason why I love this treatment is because of the next question. How long do the treatments last?
Well, yeah, the treatments are permanent. So what's really exactly, the swelling is temporary, but the fat is gone for good. So that is definitely a big bonus, which is why I coined the term surgery in a syringe, because it's very surgical-like, but without having to have any surgery. So it's a very exciting treatment in that way.
Who shouldn't have Kybella? Are there any contraindications?
The main contraindication, or the only absolute contraindication, is if you have an infection, ongoing infection at the injection site. So what that means is if you're treating the neck and you're a gentleman that has a really bad folliculitis, for example, in the beard, or a lot of agitation in the area, we don't want to take something, inject through an infected area, and then inject into the neck. I think there are some relative contraindications. Well, and also we would not inject pregnant patients.
Of course.
Nonetheless, I think some of the relative contraindications are patients that have a lot of skin laxity, and that could be a bit of an issue. If you've got patients that come in that have nearly an empty water balloon, so to speak, or a really thinned out neck, and they're hoping that this will tighten things. And although you can get some tightening and retraction, this is probably not a good candidate. Also, patients, if they have really strong platysma bands, and that platysma is the neck muscle. It's kind of like when you strain or say E, and you can really see those cords. Those can sometimes get skeletonized if we get rid of more fat, so they become more prominent. So I also tend to kind of put a yield sign or proceed with caution when those patients come in.
Mm-hmm. And the side effects. This seems to be somewhat of an issue, at least in my area, where everyone wants to partake in treatments, but they kind of tie my hands behind my back. Nobody wants any downtime, so they want results without downtime.
Right. Don't we all?
So you see it too.
100%. I think with the way that we've been able to navigate this in New York is just to be very open and transparent. And I tell patients, like, listen, you're going to get, again, a surgical type outcome, but without any surgery. We are going to permanently destroy fat with the same syringe and needles that we use for your Botox treatment. The least you can do is give me some social downtime in exchange for this. So you've got to plan this out. It's never a good time to have downtime in New York, or of course in your city also, where again, I know that we have very similar probably patients in the way that what their expectations are, because I know you have an amazing practice. So their expectations have to be set early out. And I just tell patients, just give me some downtime and I will give you a great outcome. And I think having that transparent conversation has led to some really meaningful like relationship building with our patients and trust, because they come in and they are like, here's my scarf, I'm ready to go. Or like, I didn't come back for a month because I had a bunch of stuff on my calendar. This is my Netflix and chill weekend, and I know I'm going to look a little still silly maybe on Monday, but this is as good as it's going to get, so let's go for it. And I think once they've got that, again, we've done 3,000 plus treatments. Like, we've been able to get people to get excited about it and come back.
That's wonderful. So the first time, I think the swelling can be more so than the subsequent times. Do you find that to be true?
Absolutely. I think it's a really wonderful observation and point that you make. There's no doubt that subsequent treatments, in my experience, lead to a third to half as much swelling for a third to half as long. So what I find is if someone was really swollen for 3 or 4 days, they might be really swollen, but not as much as the first time for maybe a day and a half to 2 days. If their swelling was persistent for 10 days, but just kind of lingering, it usually gets cut down to 6 days or 7 days. And then on another third treatment, it's barely been noticeable. So much so that I have patients call us and they're worried that the drug didn't work. They're like, it didn't work. And I'm like, what do you mean it didn't work? They're like, I'm not that swollen. Is it not doing it? I don't mind. And it's like so funny with the psychology of this thing. It's like if you're really swollen and have a bullfrog neck, it's like, oh my God, I can't believe it. But they're like, yeah, it's working. All of a sudden you don't have as much swelling or downtime. And they're like, what happened to my bullfrog? I want to make sure it's gone. And we're like, no, it's okay. You have less fat. Like, okay, I just want to make sure you didn't use less treatment. I'm ready for it. So
that's so funny.
Our patients.
So is there anything they can do when they go home to minimize the side effects, minimize the swelling?
Absolutely. I tell patients 5 things to do. Ice aggressively, avoid salty foods, avoid going to the gym, sleep with 1 or 2 pillows propping you up, and I tell them to avoid alcohol, all this for the first 24 to 48 hours, and that is definitely going to be the best way to decrease their swelling.
So before we shift gears, I like to give our audience a rough estimate of what this will cost them if they have, for example, a double chin. What would it be to roughly take care of it with Kybella?
Every part of the country, it sort of ranges. The averages that I've heard from around the country, and I think which seem pretty fair, would be to expect the treatments to start at $1,200 per treatment, but definitely can get a bit higher based on how much of a double chin and how much surface area needs to be covered. So I think a general $1,500 to $1,800 per treatment session is probably on average and can certainly be less or more. And again, most people need 2 to 3 treatments. So altogether, most patients are spending anywhere from $2,500 to $4,500, depending on what they expect and how much volume they need to get rid of.
And other than the double chin, I know that you have a lot of experience using this amazing drug in other parts of the body. Can you talk to me about Kybella for off-label use?
Yeah, so that has been a really exciting area to venture into. We, again, call it surgery in a syringe because I looked at it from the perspective of contouring different areas of the body. So I have treated the jowl fat, the bra fat, abdomens, love handles, knees, calves, ankles, inner thighs, outer thighs, upper back fat, the love handle created in dimples of Venus. I mean, we've done, you name it, we've probably done it. And it's been a really, really exciting adjunct to the practice for specific patients who just do not want to undergo surgery and want a very specific, contoured, bespoke look. And I think that's what we're able to do in a comparison to some of the devices that are out there.
Mm-hmm. I really like it for the jowls, and it almost goes hand in hand with lifting the mid-face, which also lifts the lower face a bit. But once you use Kybella along with your filler, you get a very nice sharpening of the jawline.
I totally agree with you. I think that you can really create some incredible outcomes along that lower third of the face. So that's a really good observation, and I would echo that completely.
So anything else about Kybella before we go on to my next topic of conversation?
I think that we covered a lot of great ground, and your questions are fantastic. I think that probably about the main thing is just for clinicians who are out there listening to this to continue to be encouraged by the treatment. I know that there can be some challenges just with navigating swelling or different things like that. But your patients, when you treat them therapeutically and you stay on label with the dose, you can really make some transformative changes And if you happen to be a prospective patient out there and you're someone who's listening to this great podcast put on by my colleague here, I would tell you to, ask your doctor, ask your injector about this treatment. It's really great and can spare you a surgical procedure depending on what you're really hoping to achieve.
So you're not only the king of Kybella, you're the cheerleader of Kybella. And I can really hear the passion in your voice and how you're talking so very genuinely. This is not something that you're selling. This is something that you truly believe can help your patient look better and feel better about themselves. And I'm really glad to see that.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I want to treat any of my patients as if they're a family member. And I've treated several family members with this treatment, and they've all been, I still have to see them at family gatherings and dinner. So you really don't have the option to not do a great job with them because you're going to hear about it. And so no good deed goes unpunished. So certainly have to make sure that you give them a great outcome. And they've seen that and been really happy. So it is a passion of mine. Just because I think it was unique and creative and innovative. It was first in class. It was the first time we'd had an FDA-approved permanent fat-dissolving injection. And I think that just tells you where the future of aesthetics are going, that we're getting great outcomes and more powerful things that don't always require surgery. And I love surgery. I trained in plastic surgery.
Yes.
But the vision and the goal is to always give people the least invasive or least amount of downtime in an exchange for a really great outcome. And I think we can start to achieve that when we start looking at these types of treatments.
So a lot of firsts are coming, and you speak internationally at aesthetic conferences. What have you seen that hasn't yet made it here, but that you're excited about?
Oh, that's a great question. I would say probably one of the things are, although we have a lot of fillers on our shores and in our shelves, so to speak, as well, there are some really exciting, I think, new fillers that are similar to the portfolios that we already have that are really helping us as artists have the full gamut and the full palette at our disposal. So I would say that it's really some of the newer fillers that haven't come over yet. I think within the Emervel or the Restylane line, it's called Emervel Abroad, but we already have Refine and Define. There's some great stuff coming over with Kiss, which is for the lips. There's also Volume, which is meant for also structure and mid-face. I think those are some really exciting things on the horizon. I would say from Juvederm, I think probably really looking at like Vo-Lift, Vo-Light are also some real, and Vo-Lux are also some really exciting things. I mean, Vo-Lift, I guess we already have, but mainly Vo-Lux and also the Vo-Light are really exciting fillers that are on the horizon, which are skin boosters, but then also the other one for structure. So we're just starting to get the full portfolio to help our patients. And I think that's pretty cool.
Talk to me about what your definition of beauty is. You know, one of my goals with this podcast is to make beauty more democratic and accessible and inclusive for more people to partake and really steer away from one idea of beauty in one color. And I'm interested to know what you think beauty means.
So to me, beauty is, I think it's really a function of someone's overall happiness with what's on the inside matches the outside or vice versa. And what that means to me is I have patients come in who are physically gorgeous and perceptibly beautiful in every different capacity physically, but there's still something missing with the inside and they feel either empty or hollow or don't have some semblance of this purpose or something that's keeping them from feeling as good on the inside as they look on the outside. And I have other patients who are beautiful people on the inside and so excited and happy, but they're still concerned about something that's perceptible that's on the outside. So I think the confluence of when everything is in sync with how you feel is good on the inside, matching the outside and vice versa, I think that's what leads to beauty.
So how close do you think we are to your definition of beauty in the real world?
Well, based on how much time people spend on Instagram, maybe further away than we've ever been. I feel like there are certain elements that are always like really encouraging, and then others times where you've got this like sense of emptiness or loneliness that people have this that are just like perceived throughout certain demographics in our society, where you read things about how the people are calling themselves the loneliest they've ever been, yet they're more plugged in than they've ever been.
That's so sad.
Right? So there's all of these different elements. I do think on the by and large, we are very close to it. I'm just kind of kidding when it comes to that, but I think there's something to be said about social media and how that does create some semblance of emptiness or the FOMO concept. But all in all, I think that people more or less are content. They take care of themselves well. They're definitely trying to match inner and external ways. There's a biggest push on wellness than we've ever seen, more attempts at workplace balance and workplace integration. So I think we're working on getting there, but there's still some work to be done.
If you could change one thing in this industry, what do you want to be known for?
Well, I think if I could change something in the industry, I mean, I know what I'd want to be known for, but I think there's also something I could change in the industry. If there's something I could change in the industry, it would be raising the bar in the quality of aesthetic medicine that's delivered.
Amen.
I worry a lot about people masquerading with certain titles or the lack of oversight for different people that perform the procedures that we train for 10 years plus to perform. And I think that is something that in the industry will hurt everyone, because people will rarely blame the clinician, they'll blame the product. So it's kind of when patients come in, they say, I don't want to do Botox. And I'm like, why is that? Like, why bad Botox? I'm like, what do you mean? Like, well, my brow fell, this. I go, well, no. You didn't have bad Botox. Your Botox worked great. You had great Botox. You just had a bad injector, right? Like, the Botox did what it was supposed to do. It paralyzed that muscle temporarily, but you just had someone that injected into the wrong location. But people's gut feeling is to go after the product or say, oh my gosh, that product didn't work well. It's like, not necessarily. So I think that if I could change anything in the industry, it'd be raising the bar. As far as what I want to be known for, I want to be known, I think, for someone who's an innovator and for somebody who's not afraid to help push the field forward, but is not going to compromise anyone or anything to do that. And we really want to be known as surgeons, scientists, and who also wants to share with the community.
Well, you have already in your career set such an example of sharing your knowledge and educating peers that it's just wonderful to have attended some of the talks that you give. And I always walk away having known more, just talking to you about Kybella. I mean, I love the surgery in a syringe, and I love the way you describe that it's non-animal, non-human, but very known to humans. So you just really have a great way of describing things and making everyone have an aha moment. Congratulations for really having mastered the art of communication. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Patients that are in the New York City area, how can they find you?
Well, I basically feel like I live at the office when I'm not traveling, so they don't have to go much
further. On the door after hours.
70th and 5th, the light, we were burning the midnight oil every day, so to speak. But no, we're located at 70th and 5th Avenue, right next to the Frick across from Central Park. Our practice is called Lux Surgery. We are the confluence of luxury and aesthetic surgery. And we have an incredible team that is waiting to help take care of individuals, because that's what we do. We love getting lost in the service of others. And we can be reached at luxsurgery.com. You can be reached our Instagram handle at luxsurgery. Certainly our office 212-508-0000. And so, but it's been really a pleasure being here, and you've been so kind and gracious with your compliments of me as an educator, but I would want to echo those back to you, because it takes a lot of effort and a lot of work to put such a quality podcast together. And the fact that you are so committed and focused with being a great doctor, running a full team, traveling, lecturing, and also a mom. I mean, those are all really big challenges. So I really kudos to you and compliments for being an educator for so many people with your podcast. This is really wonderful.
Thank you.